Bush, last time we talked to you, you said like as an offense, you're going to have to do some searching in the offseason to figure out how you approach this next year. Just what did you kind of find? What did y'all try to attack when you kind of started building this roster?
Yeah, there's a lot of pieces there. I think first is obviously replacing the guys that either graduated or left. So there was certainly some urgency and intensity in doing so. I think schematically, obviously, you're looking at each situation, what was good, what actually got repped. But I think the bigger focus is just the emphasis. And I think for us, certainly through 2 days of spring football, the details have been critical, forcing the focus piece of it and the finish. And I think sometimes that can get lost in trying to schematically figure out what we got to do to get better. But the guys have done a great job in the first 2 days.
Bush, how have you guys been evaluating this quarterback play early on, just seeing what you guys have, learning the offense, just the full nine? They got a couple different, a new guy in the room, Cutter returning, Bo. Just talk about that quarterback room.
Looking for growth always, particularly with the guys that have been here. And I think obviously you have where you want them to be, but you also got to look at where they started. And so certainly some guys who've taken a huge jump from year one to year two. Again, it's always going to come down to decision making and completions and running the offense, and certainly that leadership piece. I think you touched on it with a guy like Zach Calzada. You're thrust into this leadership role, and that's as critical as the physical part of it.
What about Zach's game that you like as you were evaluating veteran guys that you need to go out and add some of?
I think it's the experience piece. It's a guy that's been in this league, that's done it as a starter, won football games. That's where we started there. I think, as you go through that process and you're watching quarterbacks, that a guy that's been there and done that certainly gives you a little bit of a security blanket in your mind.
Bush, with all that went on last year, it would have been easy for Jamori to kind of just go elsewhere. How big was it to keep him around, and what have you kind of seen from him early?
I think it's been critical, and it's a guy who's been extremely focused in the first two practices, as the whole wide receiver group has been as well. There's a level of urgency, I think, with this offense. We know that, and I think that group's got a little bit of a chip on their shoulder, and that's how we need to play.
You worked with Damien at Missouri too. What makes him a good coach? What makes him such a good fit for this?
Always been super impressed with him. Met him about 5-6 years ago. I think it's a guy that was an NFL journeyman, if you will. And so I realized shortly that he had been at 6-7 different NFL spots. And in some ways, as a player, I think you take a little bit of each coach with you. Extremely knowledgeable, ability to connect with the players. Again, a guy who's been there, done that, and just somebody I really trust.
Does it feel like a little reunion? You, him, JJ, Jamori were all together there, and now you're kind of all back together full circle.
Yeah, I think so. In some ways, maybe that's a new trend in college football, certainly, where you've been at a spot, you've got trusting guys, you know exactly what you're getting. So we're fortunate to have those guys here.
Marcus talked about just the offensive line play. And last year, it wasn't up to the standard, and for a couple of years, it's not been what they kind of built this on. They're trying to get back to that with experienced guys. What have you seen from those guys, their work ethic? And I know it's been short on the field, but what are you seeing from some of those guys you guys brought in? And talking about that leadership aspect, are you getting any of that from some experienced guys?
It's always hard from a leadership standpoint, just 2 practices in, but I do think from a blue-collar mentality, that's what's showing up with that group. You really don't hear a ton from them. I think the blending of the guys who have been here, who know what it takes, and the guys that we acquired, it's a group that's gone to work. And we're fortunate that Eric Wolford's here. I think we all know that, and we'll see where we go there.
Bush, you mentioned, obviously you've been doing this for a long time from the coaching aspect. When you kind of get into spring, you get everything started, what's kind of like the line that you got to be patient in some ways because everything's sort of new, the guys are new, but also being like, this is our standard here, like we got to get going when we need to here.
Great question. I think schematically you're always on that install more, install less, when do we push back? So you certainly got to see the forest amongst the trees in that regard of it doesn't have to look perfect today, but we're building. To the second part, though, I think from the emphasis, right, the standards, that's got to be, unrelenting from day one, and so for us, again, we're so onto the details of this, right? Every guy locked into what we got to do. Certainly the focus for us from a fundamental standpoint and the attention to detail that we have out here and the finish understanding what that needs to look like for us to be successful.
What's the off-season emphasis for Jamari and Wilcox to take that potential we saw so much last year and translate that into maybe a future role?
I think the biggest thing is making the second level miss. I think he's got big play potential. Certainly last year at times, and really throughout the year, what we struggled with was the big play. So I think the biggest thing for all those backs, certainly in this league, you look at the success of backs in this league over the years, it's always come down to guys who can create the big play, make safeties miss in space, and be more explosive.
It doesn't seem quite as hectic as last year when you were shoved into this like right before spring practice started, but you do have maybe 9 new starters on offense. What is that? How does that continuity help, though, just from your standpoint, even if you have so many new players?
Yeah, I think it's critical. I mean, for coaches, year 2 is really like year 8, and year 3 is like 15 years. And so, I think just in every regard, right, with the staff, the expectations, everybody being on the same page, knowing what it looks like. I still feel, though, right, in this new age of college football, I mean, there's still a lot of moving parts, and you got new guys at the quarterback position, new guys at the offensive line position, and throughout all positions. So that challenge is always there, but it's nice to be dealing with year 2 things and not year 1 things.
All right, everybody good? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, guys. Good seeing you guys, man.